This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you an exclusive interview with Atul Kulkarni, ADGP, National Investigation Agency, on 3rd Ministerial Conference on Countering Financing of Terrorism. Interviewer is Kaushik Roy, AIR correspondent.
Terrorism is an evolving global threat. One of the major reasons behind sustenance of the monster of terrorism is terror financing. Measures to stop terror financing will help curb the menace of terrorism. India is going to host the No Money for Terror Conference 2022 on the 18th and 19th of November 2022 at New Delhi. This is the 3rd Ministerial Conference on Counter-Terror Financing. To talk more about this conference, we have in the studios with us the Additional Director General of Police of the National Investigation Agency, Shri Atul Kulkarni. So what is the No Money for Terror conference about? Can you give us a little background of this conference that is being hosted by India?
Basically, the conference is all about countering terrorism financing, which has become an essential part of the global agenda in response to terror threat. Almost every country and many international organizations have acknowledged this ever-evolving threat. Now, as a part of this agenda, the first No Money for Terror conference was organized by France. This was in 2018 to target financing of terrorist organizations, especially the focus was on global terrorist organizations like the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. The outcomes of those conferences were presented by the French president in a public communique which was called the Paris Agenda. Now, continuing with these efforts, the second edition of the conference was hosted by Australia in November 2019. The second conference obviously built upon the important work done in the first edition and focused on understanding terrorism threats and build political momentum to apply to them. Now, the third edition is going to be hosted in India, which is what you mentioned just, 18th and 19th of November. This edition will focus on international cooperation to combat terrorist financing and will focus on sharing our understanding of the terrorism financing threat with emphasis on South Asia region and sharing the best approaches to counter these threats.
So, what is terror financing and how big challenge is it?
Basically, terrorists, as we all are aware, they need money for everything that they do. Terrorists basically need money and other assets for purchasing weapons, recruiting cadres, training them, equipping them, their travel, their accommodation, etc. and also to plan and execute their attacks. So this is why terror financing is important, and this is how we have to analyze various aspects of terror financing. This involves the solicitation, collection or provision of funds with the intention that they may be used to support terrorist acts or terrorist organizations. We can categorize very broadly into two categories: the external source of terror financing and the internal sources of terror financing. Internal will be very obviously known to you. That is basically the funds generated within the country. But the external sources are a very complicated thing to look at and control also. This will include funding from the abroad, funding by foreign-based non-governmental organizations or charities whose funds will be diverted, the funding generated through drug trafficking, smuggling of fake currency notes, which will include Indian currency notes, etc. So these are complex things which are going to be really needing a lot of focused attention from all the investigating agencies. Not only the sources of funds, but also the method of transferring funds is an important part of terror financing cycle. Funds can be moved through the legal channels like the banks and the trade entities, also through the unorganized channels, things like cash. Hawala is, our word given to the world. In Hawala, what actually happens is the money doesn't get transferred. It is only the word which gets transferred.
But this is all illegal and
this is all illegal.
Absolutely no government gives any sanction to this kind of illegal activities. But I'm sure that you will be going to be discussing these kind of issues threadbare, because these things are used in a huge way by terrorist organizations.
Very correctly stated by you. Basically, the conference is, going to discuss a number of things. It is a very structured conference, and there are 4 sessions, main sessions, which are going to be held besides the inaugural at the hands of Honorable Prime Minister, who himself has a zero tolerance policy
towards terrorism. Absolutely.
And which policy is very ably implemented at the level of Honorable Home Minister and also the Home Ministry in general, which we have seen in the last few years. So besides these two sessions, there are going to be 4 sessions in which these 4 sessions are going to be chaired by the ministers of the Government of India. One of the sessions is going to be chaired by Honorable Home Minister himself, and the other 3, one is going to be chaired by the Honorable External Affairs Minister and 2 others by 2 Ministers of State. Now these sessions, they are going to discuss a number of things, including the things like use of formal and informal channels of funds for terrorism, number 1. Number 2, the global scenario of terror funding with special focus on South Asia. This is the session incidentally which is going to be chaired by the Honorable Home Minister. Emerging technologies and terrorist financing. Now actually, you and me as common citizens, we have our perception of transfer of funds is entirely different from the perception of these people, these characters who are unscrupulous. They are exploiting every technological advance, like the blockchain technology, like the cryptocurrencies. So everything is kind of being used by them optimally. So all those aspects will be dealt with in this session, emerging technologies and terrorist financing. And then, of course, the session to be chaired by External Affairs Minister will be on international cooperation to address challenges in combating terrorism financing.
This is indeed very timely, sir, and as our listeners will also agree that these are very important topics and very timely to be discussed, because not only India but the entire South Asian region and the world at large faces terrorism, and this has to be fought head-on. On this issue, sir, can you please tell us, since you are the apex body, the National Investigation Agency, what steps have been taken by the Government of India to counter terror financing?
We all in India, though we were facing the scourge of terrorism for last 3 decades, in fact in Jammu Kashmir and Punjab we had it in the 80s, and thereafter we had the terrorism touching us in 93, Bombay terror serial blast, which was followed by Bombay terror attack of 26/11. And thereafter, the government kind of thought of establishing an agency at the level of Government of India, which was the genesis of
the
National Investigation Agency. So it came to be established today with the foresight and with the vision of Honorable Home Minister. We have more than 18 branches of NIA besides the head office, and it has been mentioned by him also very recently that we are going to touch each of the states in the country, and we are going to have a small branch there. Besides this, we also have got a division created in the NIA which is called the Terror Funding and Fake Currency TFFC division, which is dealing with terror funding in particular. So NIA is strengthening various divisions in it through various amendments to the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act and the NIA Act. There has been more and more empowerment of the NIA. So now we can designate individuals like the US as individual terrorists. We can designate organizations as terrorist organizations and unlawful organizations, and we can then take up the activities like freezing their assets and all that. Basically, NIA since its existence has registered more than 150 cases related to terror financing, and more than 1,000 persons have been arrested in those cases, of which more than 200 have been convicted already. Since we are very methodical in our investigations, the conviction rate is as of now 100%. Now, as I was telling, there are a number of other steps which have been taken, as I was mentioning about the amendments to various laws to strengthen them, then training programs to be conducted for the state police personnel, then of course, effectively implementing various global standards which have been set by various international bodies and the UN Security Council in its resolutions, etc. Plus the intelligence and security apparatus of the central and the state governments has also been beefed up. So all in all, the Government of India has taken a number of steps, especially since the 26/11 terror attack in Mumbai, because that was one kind of a wake-up call for all.
Absolutely, sir. In the global level, sir, what are the mechanisms that are available to counter terror financing?
In the global scenario, there are multiple entities which are dealing with terror finance. One of the first and foremost entity which came into being was the Financial Action Task Force, FATF in short, which came in existence after the G7 summit in Paris again in July 89. Their initial focus was to establish protocol for controlling the money laundering. But post 9/11, the FATF also started looking into terror financing. So they are also there. Then again, they further modified it. So FATF has actually been the main global standard setting body for various mechanisms of money flow and how the money is kind of accounted for, especially in connection with terror financing. Besides this, you have also the other FATF-styled regional bodies which have come up. FATF per se has membership of about 40 countries, so it's kind of an exclusive group. India became a member of FATF in 2010, and there is an exercise in which there is a mutual analysis of countries' financial health in that sense is done. And our analysis incidentally is due next year, in which other countries will come and analyze our mechanisms. So this is one major mechanism, FATF and FATF-style regional bodies. There are regional bodies whose membership goes to the tune of 200. In addition to above, we have the other bodies like the Interpol. Recently, we also had the Interpol conference in Delhi.
Yes.
The general body meeting, which was a major event. Then there is the International Monetary Fund. Then there is a body of the United Nations called United Nations Counterterrorism Committee Executive Directorate, UNCTED. And there is also United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, UNOCT. There are similar other several organizations. But why NMFT stands out? NMFT stands out because NMFT is looking exclusively at terror financing. And though it's of fresh origin in terms of existence, NMFT aims to focus on terror financing and evolve the standard operating procedures, the mechanisms, share the best practices among countries, also evolve mechanisms of informal sharing of intelligence so that, the problem can be nipped in bud if there is a fund flow. So all these things are kind of proposed to be handled in the NMFT.
Just a little while back, you mentioned about the different sessions that you are going to have over the 2 days that the conference is going to take place in Delhi. You mentioned about various themes and what the Home Minister would be speaking on. Could you also throw some light on what are the topics that are going to be discussed in the various sessions of the conference?
The key issues that the government plans to discuss include the use of virtual assets and crowdfunding platforms by terrorist entities, their use of the dark web, the links between terror financing and legitimate economic activities and payment intermediaries. Deliberations will also be done with regard to the misuse of non-profit organizations and non-financial businesses in terror financing as well as terror financing through the money transfer service scheme and Hawala networks. The conference will focus further on discussions about challenges faced by investigation agencies while probing terror financing crimes, the sharing of information among financial intelligence units, and recent trends in combating terror financing money laundering risks.
Can you please tell us what's the significance of this conference for the world and also for India?
India is, poised to take a leap in the world in terms of being an economic power. So for us, it holds great significance, and globally, the countries have been affected by terrorism and militancy. So we understand the pain and trauma of similarly impacted nations. And in order to display solidarity with peace-loving nations and to help create a bridge for sustained cooperation on countering terrorist financing, India has already hosted the annual General Assembly of Interpol. This was held in Delhi, and there was also a special session of the United Nations Counterterrorism Committee. I participated in the Mumbai event at the Hotel Taj, which was one of the targets in 26/11 attack. Homages were paid to the departed souls at that place. So this is what the NMFT is wanting to build among the nations.
Right, sir. And to conclude, sir, what do we intend to achieve through this conference?
As I have mentioned, it's an evolving mechanism. It's pretty fresh. So, a number of things are being thought of and evolved. But 2-3 things which can be immediately aimed at or which we can think of the conference is likely to achieve is one is sharing of best practices. The second is building a mechanism for faster sharing of intelligence so that preventive action can be taken, especially among the investigating agencies. And the third, of course, is capacity building of each other. So we would like to share our experiences, build capacities for other countries. Similarly, other countries would want to do it for Indian side. So these are basically the things that I would say that the conference should aim to achieve at, and we are hopeful that the conference will play a significant part in the global effort against terror financing and aim to stem the financing of terrorism in order to enhance collective security and further to contribute to the betterment of global citizens.
That's indeed wonderful, sir. We thank you so much for joining us in the studios today and talking to All India Radio News. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
You were listening to an exclusive interview with Atul Kulkarni, ADGP, National Investigation Agency, on 3rd Ministerial Conference on Countering Financing of Terrorism. Interviewer was Kaushik Roy, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.